31 days of October, week 4. Here we go. Welcome to 31 days of October, week 4, where I count down what I watched over the past week. Guys, we are near the end of this thing. We only have 1 week left after this. Since Halloween's going to be on Saturday, I'm going to try my damnedest to get week 5 out on Saturday, probably sometime during the evening. So look for that. For this episode, I actually have 2 special guests for you. I have Tim from the Late Reviews, and I also have the Horror Addicts. But first, we're going to start out with Tim from the Late Reviews. I consider Tim to be a personal friend. He is an awesome guy. He is one of the coolest guys I think I've ever met. Not just YouTube people, but just people in general. Recently, we collaborated and did a metal theme of John Carpenter's Halloween. And I recorded my drums and I sent it off to Tim, and he pretty much took care of all the editing. So he put a lot of hard work into this. So I'll put a link to that below. Check that out. You guys will have a lot of fun with it. But first, let's check out what Tim watched over the past week. Take it away, Tim.
What's going on, guys? It's Tim from the Late Reviews, and before I start, I just want to thank Lee for inviting me to be part of 31 Days of October. I've had a blast watching your video so far, and it's just awesome to be a part of it, so thank you. So let's jump right in. On Monday the 19th, I watched Friends with Benefits, which is a romantic comedy featuring Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis, and although you're dying to hear my review of that, sadly, it's not a horror movie, so you'll have to wait for that. That same night, though, I did watch Zombie Hunter, which is a Danny Trejo movie, and without me even reviewing it for you guys, you know how that movie turned out. It was pretty shitty. However, though, I did have a pretty good time with it. I was in the mood for a shitty B movie. This is on Netflix if you want to watch it. People who might like it are people who like Mad Max and a zombie movie like the Resident Evil films, mainly the third film. It's a really weird mix of those two things, and it is kind of stylized. If you like stylized movies, it has those Tarantino title cards, and it's got a very weird use of pink, it's weird, but it's cool. So give this one a shot, but don't hate me if you end up hating it, because I told you it was shitty. On Wednesday the 21st, I watched Frankenstein's Army, and if you haven't heard of this movie, don't worry, I hadn't either, but I randomly watched it on Netflix, and it was the best decision I made. This is a B-movie, found footage horror movie, and before you turn the video off because I said found footage, because I know everyone hates found footage movies, but honestly, give this one a shot. This is an interesting one because instead of it being modern day found footage, it takes place around World War II with the Russians and the Nazis, and how the story unfolds is really, really cool. For such a low budget film, the set design is awesome, the monster design is awesome. If you like monster movies, definitely give this one a shot. It's really, really unique. If you end up hating it, you know the saying, don't hate the reviewer, hate the movie. On Thursday the 22nd, I watched The Evil Dead, which is by far my favorite horror movie of all time, right above Hellraiser. The Evil Dead, if you haven't seen this movie, go find a way to watch it. By now, you can probably find a copy in any movie store that you have. It's a perfect horror movie. It's campy, it's scary, it's funny, and the directing by Sam Raimi single-handedly made me appreciate film more than I did before having seen this movie. Because of the amateur approach to this film, it actually ends up making it that much better, because you can really feel a ton of guys getting together and making a film because they really, really want to, not worrying about having to make it professional, because in the end, they made a solid horror movie. On Saturday the 24th, I watched Insidious. If you haven't seen this movie yet, and you are complaining about horror movies not being good in the past 10 years, give Insidious a chance, because honestly, I really think it is a modern day horror masterpiece. James Wan knows how to play with the audience. He knows how to get you glued to the screen only to build you up to actually a genuine scare. None of this jump scare stuff, and when there are jump scares, it's not some stupid CGI effect. He relies heavily on makeup, leaving the film to be really, really effective and actually scary, but not cheap. That same night, around 3 o'clock in the morning, I think it was, I watched Resident Evil Afterlife. Honestly, after Resident Evil Extinction, which I thought is probably the worst movie in the franchise, Resident Evil 4 is actually not too bad. It feels more like a video game. I mean, I haven't played the video games, but it feels like a video game. Milla looks as good as always. I think having Paul W.S. Anderson back directing rather than just writing helped the franchise get back on the rails. And lastly, that same night around 4 in the morning, it was a long night for me. I finished off this franchise and watched Resident Evil Retribution, which honestly I think is one of the more stronger ones. To me, it goes the first Resident Evil, the second Resident Evil, the fifth Resident Evil, the fourth one, and the third one. Retribution is awesome. It's a short and sweet movie. It's an hour and 30 minutes, I think. Jill Valentine's back. It's awesome. It looks good. The special effects look a little bit better than normal. And again, Paul W.S. Anderson does a really great job at making this feel like a Resident Evil film. The first one and the second one really felt like true Resident Evil films, like how it should feel. It felt like a video game, survival horror, action also, and this movie is right up there with it. I cannot wait for the sixth film. Again, Lee, thank you so much for having me on 31 Days of October, and unfortunately this month is coming to a close, but it only gets us closer to Christmas time, my favorite time of the year.
Okay, my next guests up are the Horror Addicts. I have been wanting to work with these guys for a while. They are awesome people. They love horror. And if you just check out a few of their videos, you will be able to tell. These guys really love horror. So take it away, Horror Addicts.
Hi, I'm Gory B Movie.
And I'm Oz.
And we're Horror Addicts. So today, Lee asked us what horror movies we've been watching this month. What did we see today, Lols?
Goosebumps.
And it was...
Amazing.
We had a great time. We saw it with Danny Nightmare, and we'll be reviewing it soon on Horror Addicts. This week, Lols and I also had a mini Friday the 13th marathon. While Lols is a big fan of the character of Jason and has heard his origin story told many times from both me and Dan, he had never actually seen a Friday the 13th movie. So Lols and I watched Friday the 13th Part 3 and Part 4. I did have to censor it a little bit. Not the gore. Lols loves a good kill. He just wasn't a big fan of all the nudity in the film, so we fast-forwarded the skinny dipping scene and a few other ones.
Too many naked people.
On my own, I also watched Part 1 with commentary and Part 2. Also, over the course of this week, I watched Nightbreed the director's cut and watched that with commentary, and yesterday I watched Oculus and then watched it again with commentary. Because I'm a nerd!
And I am too.
Bossy.
Last week was Danny Nightmare and I's 3-year wedding anniversary, and of course we had to watch a horror movie on that day. We watched The Gift, and if you haven't seen it, we highly recommend it. It's got some interesting plot twists in there and some pretty creepy scenes. And if you're afraid of monkeys, The Gift is one movie that will stick with you forever. Danny Nightmare and I also introduced Undead Jess to Clown. Clown's a hard one to track down, and you may not be able to watch it without a multi-region DVD player, but we highly recommend that if you can see it, that you do. It's certainly one of the scariest movies that we think has come out in the last couple of years. I also rewatched Adam Green's Hatchet, because Hatchet. And on Netflix, Danny Nightmare, Undead Jess, and I watched Wormwood.
Not me. Aw. It sounds like a weird horror movie that I would enjoy.
It certainly is weird, but also pretty badass. It's sort of like if you mixed Dawn of the Dead with Mad Max. If that hasn't sold you, I don't know what will. Well, Lee, thanks for inviting us on your show. Hope you guys are having a great October. And if you want to hear about more horror movies or games or books or anything else horror, come visit us over at Horror Addicts and get your fix.
Bye.
Bye!
Okay guys, now I'm back. Let's talk about what I watched over the past week. First up, I watched The Walking Dead, the last episode. This was a freaking amazing episode. This was the second episode. In this one, Rick and Daryl, Michonne, they're all away from the camp. And then the compound gets overrun by these savages, or what I like to call the W people. And these people have come to clean house. They want to kill everybody. They are freaking crazy. And Carol is awesome. Carol just really took charge and she just completely whipped ass. And it was awesome because throughout the whole last season, she was putting on this front like she is this sweet little dainty lady and she is not a badass at all. And boy, did she turn it around. Her acting is just impeccable in this episode. Pretty much every episode she's in. She has been kind of the most loved character for the past few seasons. And she really shined in this episode, and she's almost my favorite character now. She's just amazing. I had so much fun with this episode, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. Now, I did not watch last night's episode because I do the Amazon Season Pass, and I usually watch it on Mondays, so I'll be watching it after I record this. And I'll discuss that episode on Halloween night when I release week 5. Next up, I watched John Carpenter's Christine. And you know, this is a movie I really didn't pay attention to that much when I was a kid. And I'd never seen it on HD. This is the first time I actually saw it on Blu-ray. And the movie looks amazing, by the way. This is a Stephen King adaptation directed by John Carpenter. You can't go wrong. And I love the score in this movie. It's so cool. And I really like the way John Carpenter personified the car in this movie. The car itself is a character. And the scene near the end of the movie when the car is ablaze on fire, and that scene is just so awesome. You could take a screen cap from that and use it as a wallpaper. It just looks so freaking cool. But I really enjoy Christine. It's a fun Halloween type movie, and I have really been looking forward to watching this on Blu-ray. Now, Twilight Time released this a few years ago, and they only released 3,000 copies. And I remember that Blu-ray was getting up to around $200 on eBay. So I just waited until eventually the rights went back to Sony, which they did, and I got it for $10. Next up, I did the horror anthology Tales of Halloween. I've already posted a review for this movie, but overall, it's a fun movie. I would say it's really front-loaded. About at least half of the stories are really fun, really hilarious, and some of them are pretty creepy. And if you like Trick or Treat, then you will definitely like Tales of Halloween. Is it as good as Trick or Treat? No, it's not, but it is still very enjoyable. Next up, I watched Sam Raimi's original classic, Evil Dead. You know, I actually jumped into the whole Evil Dead craze a few years ago. I'd never watched it when I was young, and I really love this movie. As a matter of fact, I saw Evil Dead 2 and 3 before I saw the first one. And I'd always heard that 2 is kind of a remake of the first one, which it kind of is, but they're very different movies because the first one's a straight-up horror movie, and the second one is more of a horror comedy. And this one is really cool. It gets really bloody. And you know what? If you're really looking into becoming a filmmaker, I say look no further than Evil Dead. You can tell Sam Raimi worked on a shoestring budget, but he made every scene work with what he had. And sometimes that actually benefits a movie. I mean, Jaws, they could never get the freaking shark to work, so you ended up not seeing the shark except for maybe 5% of the movie, and it made it a great movie. But Evil Dead is such a classic. I love this movie. If you have not seen Evil Dead, definitely check it out. Next up, I watched Vin Diesel's The Last Witch Hunter. This movie was horrible. It's just bland, it's lifeless. All the acting performances are phoned in. It's just everything that can be wrong with the movie is wrong. The special effects are pretty nice, but outside of that, I was just so unstimulated. That's a good word for it, unstimulated. Don't waste your time with The Last Witch Hunter, trust me. And finally, I watched Shaun of the Dead. This is such a classic, and this is one of the funniest zombie movies, and it came out around right after the zombie craze started kicking up. I think that was right after 28 Days Later came out. This is such a fun movie. I just love the relationship between Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. They play so well off of each other, and every scene is so funny. And then I have to mention Edgar Wright. Wow, what an amazing director. He really knows how to take a scene where if you were just looking at the scene without any of his cuts, it wouldn't be funny at all. But he knows how to cut a movie for comedy. The comedy in this movie is timed perfectly, and the zombies are still creepy as hell. This is probably the best zombie comedy since Return of the Living Dead. I love this movie. Okay guys, that is it. That is 31 Days of October week 4. Let me know what you guys watched down in the comments below. Like I said, week 5 is going to go up on Halloween night, hopefully. And I got some special guests for that. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And Humdrum out.